My name is Gianno Aydin, and I'm a professor of philosophy of technology at the University of Twente. And the topic of my presentation is technology and desire. One could make a distinction between two completely different views and contrasting views on humans and their well-being in modern times. If one focuses on humans' inner life, then often we come across a tragic view. Take important novels in world literature, for example, Oscar Wilde, who says there are only two tragedies in life. One is not getting what one wants, and the other is getting it, which is not a very happy view. But if we focus on our outer life, especially in the context of all kind of developments in modernity, then we come across a completely different view, a happy view. The idea there is that modernity has liberated the human from all kinds of chains. Magic, religion, tradition, ignorance, we seem to have left them behind us. And modernity promises to to have generated a rational, autonomous, and stable human. And with this respect, in this context, technology plays an important role because technology enables calculation and control and enhancement of societies and humans. Historically, technology fulfilled a kind of very specific role, namely fulfilling our basic needs and provide greater efficiency. Today, technology has become a force that is no longer limited to fulfilling a particular need, but has become a force that has become a basic condition for controlling and fulfilling virtually all our desires. Technologies provide an infrastructure for managing and regulating our banking, shopping, maintaining friendships, and finding and keeping a partner. It has become a force that conditions and structures all our desires. But how to evaluate the impact of technology on humans and their well-being? There are different ways to do that. One could investigate the impact of technology on human behavior. And especially in social psychology and economy, the goal is often to discover patterns in how technology influences human behavior. Philosophy, who has often not kind of an empirical approach, engages in conceptual analysis of how the relation between technology world and behavior should be conceived. There is also a normative approach where different assessments are done in terms of autonomy, security, privacy, etc. This focus on behavior has a disadvantage, namely that the self is in one way or another black box, because this approach does not provide insight into people's motivations and sensitivities, as well as into how technology influences and structures those motivations and sensitivities, right? For example, how can people have grabbed their phones and opened an app before they are even aware of it and are surfing the waves they happen to encounter? How does that work? So, to be able to understand how that works, insight is needed into the existential facets of human behavior, but also in the way in which technologies became and become existential. Another disadvantage of focusing on behavior is that often behavior is considered to be dependent on something else. Behavior often presupposes an agent who controls her behavior, whereas if we focus on the inner life of humans, we have to say that desire implies that an agent is shaped by her desire. One may ask, why does agent X behave like Y? But the question, why does agent X desire Y, does not seem appropriate, because we already intuitively presuppose that we are, to a certain extent, our desires. We are determined by our desires. And already Plato knew that. So what I propose is to take an existential approach to the self as a desiring being, and to take and understand desire as a fundamental engine of human behavior. But then the question is, what exactly is desire? And although I take Jacques Lacan as my main guide, Lacan does not offer a very easy answer to this question. he defines desire as the structural inability to fulfill an original lack. And sometimes this definition is explained from a developmental psychology point of view. Lacan understands and interprets birth as a kind of a transition from a state of wholeness to a state of lack. Sometimes this is also called the original trauma. Because after being separated from her mother, an infant finds herself in need. Before that, she formed a unity with her mother. After separation, she experiences need. And then gradually, with the help of others, with language, after she has acquired language, and with the help of culture, the infant anticipates wholeness again and tries to become a subject. However, this kind of original lack can never be overcome, and the original wholeness can never be regained. And although in her kind of social life she tries to regain that wholeness, that remains impossible. And desire is explained against this background as a structural response to a lack or emptiness that never can be filled. So we end up with a self that is very unsettled and insatiable. Sometimes this is put in one formula by Lacan, and he calls this the metrium of desire. On the one hand, we have the subject, who is a subject of desire, but this subject is divided, bared, and yearning for wholeness. One could call it, in the terminology of Arnold Gehlen, a Mangelwesen. On the other side, there is the object of desire, or better, the object cause of desire, because this object can never be completely appropriated. So the human being is on the one hand, unsettled, and on the other hand, he's not able to completely fathom the world that he tries to understand. So we have an unsettled self, which yearns for, one could say, salvation, and then technology offers kind of a response to this problem. But before we come to technology, I have to say something else, because our kind of natural starting point is to deny this unsettled nature of the human being, because we think that we are in control and that we are autonomous. And Lacan sometimes tries to illustrate this by this painting. So the ambassadors. This is a painting, and it seems that there is nothing weird going on. So you think you are in control of what you see and what you desire. But then if you take a specific angle, you realize that there is also somebody, there is something that looks back. And you discover that before you see, actually you are already seen, and that your desire is already influenced by others, and the others in this case the painter, who has staged the painting in such a way that you also have to look in a certain way, but also broader. You are always also staged by culture. So before you see, the way you see and the way you approach things are already influenced by society and by kind of the symbolic order that has shaped you to a great extent. And this is kind of an uncomfortable situation, but Lacan's point is that we have to learn to kind of accept and recognize this situation, so which is part of our human condition. So if we focus on desire, one have to conclude that our desire is actually the desire of the other, because we are always in a particular way staged. So, and ultimately Lacan explained this in two directions. One direction is that desire is the desire for recognition of the other, because we try continuously to kind of define a place in society, our place in society, and try to be kind of also to try to be recognized by society. So the society with a capital S, but also of course other people, and there is of course a strong relation here to Hegel. But then there is also the idea that desire is the desire for what we believe the other desires, and the other with a small o and the other with a capital O. So it can be the desire of particular others, so our peers, our parents, our role models, but it can also be the desires of society as such. So, in other words, the whole idea of being autonomous is a fiction, and even our desire is the result of projections of others and of society as such. And then again, the question is how to deal with this uncomfortable situation. And again, we will see that technology will play a role there. But to sum up, so the self, from a Lacanian point of view, is an unsettled self. So the self is born and exists in a world and language that it has not chosen nor determined. But at the same time, and we cannot do otherwise, the self attempts to continuously cope both with its unsettled subjectivity and with a world that resists being completely fathomed. And then the challenge is how to become a singular subject, because we want to be autonomous, we want to be unique, knowing that we are a product of others and the big other. So other people, but also society as such. And then there technology comes in, because technology comes with a kind of a promise to kind of to get us out this uncomfortable situation. Technology promises to solve our problem, and this is seen very clearly in all kind of different situations. And take for example ads. We see that the technologies are not mere passive or neutral entities that aim to satisfy needs, but promise singular forms of satisfactions. Technologies promise providing us, you could say, with our original lack, regaining a state of wholeness. And Marx already has called this commodity fetishism. Raymond Williams, in his Imported Culture and Materialism, um, indicates that it's impossible to look at modern advertising without realizing that the material object being sold is never enough. So we are always promised something more than the kind of object that is sold to us. And rather than buying a commodity, the consumer is, one could say, engaging in a process of self-formations and self-improvement, becoming an ideal I. So fetishism in this respect can be understood as kind of removing the subject structural split, so overcoming what Lacan calls the matim of desire. But also, because we have seen that that's impossible, it's also misrepresenting our existential nature, because we are desiring beings. And although technology promises us to kind of overcome this uncomfortable situation, this kind of sense and experience of having an original lack, it is and remains impossible. So if we look at different particular technologies, take for example Tinder, then if we look at these technologies from a very critical point of view, then they seem to kind of promise us that we can regain wholeness in a very cheap way, and getting the lost object and in a very cheap way. So they seem to deny the gaze. They seem to kind of um, um, they seem to promise us that we are in control, that we choose partner, for example, instead of seeking, so we don't have to be vulnerable. The unexpected is excluded, because algorithms reduce negative surprises. So we seem to be spectators of our own life. We seem to be kind of, yeah, not dependent on others. So also in Lacanian terminology, the little object A, it seems to be denied, because Tinder promises us full enjoyment in a kind of a worldly object. If you find somebody who is fit, then your problems are solved. So it promises to completely satisfy desire and make the I whole again, not lacking anything. One could say that in this way, Tinder actually denies the human condition. So it denies this medium of desire. And then the question is this a cheap fix? Because it seems to be a cheap fix, because although we think that we are in control, although we think we can easily get a lost object and become full again, the situation that we are in, so the Tinder kind of context, is completely dependent on what others has set for us. So the subject remains completely dependent on the platform and the rules that others have set, and everything is monitored. So although we think we are autonomous and free, actually we are very much shaped in a certain direction. So what I'm interested in is the way different technologies and our engagement with technologies, um, form us. So I see technology, the engagement with technology as different types of self-formation. And then if we look at different cases, and I would like to kind of study different cases like Amazon, Tinder, Instagram, and understand them in terms of commodification, intimacy, and socialization, the question is then, does technology always deny our existential condition? From a very critical kind of leftist point of view, often the answer is yes, but I think not necessarily, because yes, technologies can have kind of a fetishistic an influence. They can objectify the self and kind of reduce ourselves to a certain object. But I believe that you can also design technologies in such a way that they, in Lacanian terms, sustain the void. So do not reduce us to a particular thing, and kind of respect our subjectivity. And I will try to kind of work that out in terms of sublimation. But then the question is, how exactly is there a way to do that? And I think kind of a marriage of technology and art is at least part of the answer there. And then I end with Steve Jobs, who actually you could say already in a certain sense saw that technology says technology alone is not enough. It's technology married with liberal arts, but I would like to add also kind of fine arts married with humanities that yields us the results that make our hearts sing. So, and I think Lacan would improve this message. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the discussion.